Imagine sharing a last name with one of history's most evil men. Now imagine being his brother. While Hermann Göring stood as Hitler's second-in-command, orchestrating the Holocaust and commanding the Luftwaffe, his younger brother Albert was doing something unthinkable. He was forging documents, bribing SS officers, pulling Jews from deportation trains minutes before they left for the death camps. This is the story of Albert Göring, the man who carried the most infamous surname in Nazi Germany, and used it to become one of history's most unlikely heroes. What you're about to hear sounds impossible, but every word of it is true. When we think of World War II, we think in black and white. Literal good versus evil. The Allies against the Axis. Heroes against monsters. But history isn't that simple, and Albert Göring's story proves it. Born in 1895 in Friedenau, Germany, Albert was the younger brother of Hermann Göring, the man who would become Reichsmarshal, founder of the Gestapo, and the architect of the Final Solutions logistics. Hermann was a decorated World War I fighter ace who became Hitler's right hand. A man so powerful, he was named Hitler's successor. Albert hated everything his brother stood for, and for 12 years while the Third Reich burned Europe to ash... Albert Göring quietly waged his own war, a secret war, one rescue at a time. By the time the war ended, he had saved hundreds, possibly thousands of lives. So why have you never heard of him? To understand Albert, you need to understand where he came from. And that story? It's stranger than fiction. The Göring brothers were born into wealth and privilege. Their father, Heinrich, was a colonial governor in German Southwest Africa. Their mother, Franziska, was cold, distant, and involved with their godfather. Yes, you heard that right. Hermann von Epenstein was a wealthy Jewish doctor and family friend. He owned castles. He showered the Görings with gifts. And he was almost certainly Albert's biological father. Look at the brothers side by side. Hermann, tall, blonde, the poster child for Nazi ideology. Albert, darker hair, gentle features, nothing like his supposed pure German lineage. Growing up, the boys were opposites. Hermann was aggressive, competitive, obsessed with military glory. Albert was sensitive, artistic, and deeply troubled by cruelty. One story from their childhood tells you everything you need to know. Young Hermann once shot a neighbor's dog with his bow and arrow, just for fun. Albert wept for days. When World War I broke out, Hermann became a fighter pilot, a hero of the Reich. He thrived in combat. Albert, meanwhile, avoided the military when he could. He studied engineering. He worked in film. He wanted nothing to do with war. But by the 1920s, Germany was broken, humiliated by the Treaty of Versailles, crushed by hyperinflation. And into that chaos came Adolf Hitler. Now, here's where it gets dark, because while Albert watched in horror as his brother joined the Nazi Party, Hermann Göring didn't just join. He became Hitler's most trusted ally, the second most powerful man in Nazi Germany. And Albert? He was about to make a choice that would haunt him and define him for the rest of his life. He decided to stay. In 1933, as Hitler seized power, Albert left Germany for Austria. He worked as an export director for a film company in Vienna. A quiet life, a safe life. But in 1938, the Nazis marched into Austria, and suddenly Albert Göring was living in the heart of the Third Reich again. He watched his Jewish friends lose their businesses, watched neighbors dragged from their homes, watched a country descend into madness. And that's when something inside him snapped. If his brother's name opened every door in Nazi Germany, then Albert would use it to kick those doors down. Albert's first rescue wasn't planned. It was instinct. One afternoon in Vienna, Albert was walking through the streets when he saw something that stopped him cold. A group of elderly Jewish women. on their hands and knees being forced to scrub the sidewalk with toothbrushes. SS officers stood over them, laughing. A crowd watched, some jeering, most silent. Albert didn't think. He just acted. He walked straight into the middle of the scene, threw off his coat, got down on his knees, and started scrubbing alongside them. The SS officers were stunned. Who was this man? Then someone whispered, "That's Göring, Hermann Göring's brother." The officers froze. They couldn't touch him. Within minutes, they ordered the women released and walked away. Albert helped the women up, brushed off their coats, and walked away like nothing happened. But everything had changed, because now he knew his name was a weapon, and he was going to use it. By 1939, Albert had become the export director at Skoda Works, a massive arms manufacturer in Czechoslovakia, now occupied by the Nazis. It was the perfect cover. He had money, he had access, and most importantly, he had authority. Albert started forging documents, transit papers, work permits, anything that could save a life. He'd call up SS headquarters, claim he needed Jewish workers for essential war production, and have them released from detention centers. Once they were out, he'd give them fake papers and smuggle them out of the country. Sometimes he'd intercept deportation trains, literally stop them at the station, and pull people off, claiming they were needed for factory work. One survivor remembered. He arrived at the train like an avenging angel. He showed papers. The guards saluted. And suddenly, we were free. But it wasn't just paperwork. Albert used his brother's name like a skeleton key. He'd wine and dine SS officers, get them drunk, and convince them to sign release forms. He'd bribe Gestapo agents with cash art, anything they wanted. He'd show up at concentration camps with fake orders bearing Hermann's signature and walk out with prisoners. And here's the thing, Hermann knew. That's right. The second most powerful Nazi in Germany knew his brother was sabotaging the regime, and he let him do it. Not because Hermann was good. He wasn't. He was a monster who sent millions to their deaths. But Albert was his little brother, and in Hermann's twisted mind, that meant something. So they made an unspoken deal. Albert could play his games, as long as he stayed quiet, as long as he didn't embarrass the family name. It was a deal with the devil, and Albert knew the price if he ever pushed too far. Albert walked a razor's edge, and he nearly fell off more than once. In 1940, the Gestapo arrested him. They'd been watching him. Too many Jews disappearing. Too many forged documents traced back to him. They threw him in a cell, questioned him for hours, threatened him with execution, and then they let him go. One phone call from Hermann and Albert walked free. No charges, no trial, nothing. But the message was clear. He was playing with fire. He didn't stop. By 1942, Albert had refined his methods into a system. He had contacts across occupied Europe, safe houses in Austria, Czechoslovakia, Switzerland. He'd smuggle people across borders hidden in trucks. He'd forge entire family histories to Aryanize Jewish friends. One man he saved, Oskar Schindler's accountant, later said, "Albert Göring was the bravest man I ever met. He risked his life every single day, but not everyone made it. For every person Albert saved, 10,000 more died. He knew he was bailing water from a sinking ship, but he kept bailing anyway. By 1944, he was exhausted, paranoid. The Gestapo was closing in again, and the war was coming to an end. But Albert's nightmare was just beginning. May 8, 1945, Nazi Germany surrendered. The war was over. The Allies began rounding up Nazi leaders. Hermann Göring was captured. He'd eventually be tried at Nuremberg and sentenced to death. And Albert thought he'd be celebrated as a hero. He was wrong. The problem was simple and devastating. His last name was Göring. When the Allies arrested him, they didn't care what he'd done. They saw the name and assumed the worst. Albert was thrown into the same prison as actual war criminals. He was interrogated, humiliated, treated like a monster. He gave them names, people he'd saved. Dozens of them. He had witnesses. He had proof. But most of the people he'd saved were scattered across the globe. Many were dead. Others had changed their names, disappeared into new lives. The Allies couldn't verify his claims. And they weren't interested in complicated stories. The narrative was simple. Nazis bad, Allies good. After 2 years, they finally let him go. No apology, no recognition, nothing. He tried to rebuild his life, but no one would hire a Göring. No one would rent to him. Neighbors spat at him in the street. He survived on handouts from the few friends he had left. He applied for denazification, the process that cleared Germans of Nazi involvement. Denied. He tried to get a visa to Argentina, to America, to anywhere. No country would take him. The man who saved hundreds of lives was now a pariah. But then something remarkable happened. The people he saved started to speak. Letters began arriving at German denazification courts. Then more and more. From Israel, from America, from Argentina. All saying the same thing. Albert Göring saved my life. By 1947, he had 34 sworn testimonies. By 1950, over 100. The courts couldn't ignore it anymore. In 1947, the Czechoslovak government finally cleared Albert's name. They officially recognized him as a rescuer, a hero, but the damage was done. Albert was broken. The years of suspicion, rejection, and humiliation had destroyed him. He spent his final years in Munich, living in a modest flat, working odd jobs when he could find them. Friends said he drank too much, that he'd become bitter. How could he not be? In 1966, at the age of 71, Albert Göring died of complications from years of poor health and stress. His funeral was small, quiet. Most of the people whose lives he'd saved didn't even know he died. He was buried in an unmarked grave. No honors, no recognition. The man who risked everything to fight evil died in obscurity. But the story doesn't end there. For decades, Albert Göring remained forgotten. A footnote in history. A ghost. But in the 1990s, something changed. Holocaust survivors and historians began pushing for recognition. They combed through Nazi records, Allied reports, survivor testimonies, and they found something astonishing. Albert didn't just save dozens. He saved hundreds, possibly thousands. Czech resistance fighters, Austrian Jews, political prisoners, artists, doctors, teachers, children. And those people went on to have children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren. Today, there are entire family lines, hundreds of people, who exist because of Albert Göring. In 2003, a survivor named John Granson spoke publicly about Albert. He was the opposite of his brother in every way. He restored my faith that even in darkness, there is light. For years, there's been a debate. Should Albert Göring be honored at Yad Vashem as righteous among the nations? The same honor given to Oskar Schindler, to diplomats and rescuers who risked everything to save Jews. But his last name remains a problem. The name Göring is so tied to evil, so stained with blood, that even in death, Albert can't escape it. As of today, he has not been officially recognized. So why does this story matter? Why should we care about a man who died over 50 years ago? Because Albert Göring represents something we desperately need to remember. He proves that you don't have to be powerful to make a difference. You don't need an army or a fortune. Sometimes all it takes is courage. He had every reason to walk away, to say, "This isn't my fight. I'm just one person." But he didn't. He stayed. He fought. Montage of modern activists, whistleblowers, everyday heroes. In a world where it's easy to turn away from injustice, Albert turned toward it. And yes, he paid a price. A terrible price. He died alone, broke, and forgotten. But he also lived knowing he saved lives. Real lives. People who went home to their families because of him. There are people alive today, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, who owe their existence to a man they've never heard of. That's legacy. Real legacy. History loves simple stories. Good versus evil. Heroes and villains. But the Göring brothers remind us that life is more complicated than that. Hermann Göring was born into privilege, given every opportunity, and chose to become a monster. Albert Göring was born into the same privilege, faced with the same choices, and chose to be human. In the end, Albert didn't save everyone. He couldn't. The machine of hatred was too big, too powerful. But he saved someone, and that someone saved another, and another. That's all any of us can do. The next time you hear a name and make a judgment, remember Albert. The next time you see injustice and think, I'm just one person, what can I do? Remember Albert, because in the end that's what he proved. One person, armed with nothing but courage and compassion, can stand against an empire. Even if history forgets your name. Albert Göring died in 1966. His grave remained unmarked until 2010, when admirers placed a memorial plaque. He has still not been recognized by Yad Vashem, but the people he saved, they remember. Before you go, I want to ask you something. Albert Göring's story was buried for decades, hidden, forgotten, and there are hundreds more like him, people who did extraordinary things in history's darkest moments, but whose names have been erased. If you think stories like this deserve to be told, if you believe we should remember the Albert Görings of history, not just the Hermann Görings, then subscribe, because we're not done uncovering these hidden stories. And here's my question for you, leave it in the comments. If your last name was Göring, if the entire world saw you as the enemy, would you have risked everything to save strangers? There's no right answer, but I want to know what you think. ... double quotes also. Do you know any other forgotten heroes from history? People who deserve to have their stories told. Drop their names in the comments. Your suggestion might become our next video. Thanks for watching. And remember, history isn't just about the famous names. Sometimes the most important people are the ones we've never heard of. Until next time.